Hi, I'm Paul Guppy with the Washington Policy Center, and this is our weekly update of highlights of issues and bills that we're tracking in the Washington State Legislature. And we are getting down to the last 2 weeks of the legislative session. So what that means is that the cutoff dates for committee action and House and Senate action have passed on most of the bills. Most of our members know that several thousand bills are introduced every legislative session, and that's usually narrowed down to about 400 or 500 that actually get passed into law. And of those, only a few dozen really have broad policy implications that affect all of us. And those are the issues that Washington Policy Center tracks, and we've been following it all through the session. And the big issue, Jason Mercier, our budget expert, has been tracking the supplemental budget bill. So the state has a 2-year budget cycle. We are halfway through that, and the legislature is now adding more spending because we have a huge surplus right now. Over 4-year outlook is about an $11 billion surplus. So what the Democrat majority in the legislature is doing right now is figuring out a way to spend virtually all of that. So the House version and the Senate have both passed supplemental bills. Rounded off, they add about $6 billion to the current 2-year budget cycle, which will bring state spending to about $65 billion for the whole budget. And that's a record level. It's also just about doubled state spending in the last 10 years, which is a huge increase, considering that our state population has increased by about 14% over the last 10 years. So state spending is definitely going up. There is a vigorous debate in the legislature about whether Washington should provide tax relief. Most other states, again, according to our research, have provided tax relief to their citizens. And we see that that's a bipartisan movement. In Republican governed states and Democrat governed states are passing some form of tax relief. Washington state has not. So Senator Christine Rolfes, who is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate, has proposed a sales tax holiday of 3 days at Labor Day, in which you wouldn't have to pay sales tax on purchases under $1,000. This idea is being ridiculed from the left and the right. Folks on the left don't like any reduction in state revenue. And of course, those of us on the more conservative free market side feel that working families in our state should get relief. There is a bill introduced by a Democratic member to cut the state sales tax by 1 percentage point across the board. Very simple. And of course, we support that, but we see that that bill was not scheduled for the cutoff dates in committee and therefore is not going to move forward. We support the concept, and we will continue to promote that idea as long as the legislature is in session. Another comment that caught us from Senator Rolfes at the committee hearing was she kind of cynically or jokingly said, all tax cuts are gimmicks. And this was in reference to her own proposal for a Labor Day 3-day tax holiday. She said, I realize it's temporary, it's a tax holiday, and therefore it's kind of a gimmick. But then she said, you know, all tax cuts are kind of a gimmick. And that really struck us because that's a fairly arrogant attitude for a public official to have regarding the hard-earned earnings of working people, families, business owners all across the state, for whom every dollar represents their labor, their value, their effort. And to have a state lawmaker say, well, it's just a gimmick when we take your money and we don't need to provide you with tax relief, we think is not the right attitude, and indicates that state leaders often don't listen to the public when people are under financial pressure. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Another issue we're tracking is the export fuel tax that was proposed as part of the transportation bill. I mentioned this before. There's a straight constitutional issue because it imposes a tax on the residents of other states. Leaders in Alaska, Idaho, and Oregon have already responded to this, but even more broadly, it's just a violation of the Commerce Clause of the US Constitution that you can impose taxes on the citizens of other states. So we're going to continue to track that. They haven't taken it out of the transportation bill, but we'll see how that goes. There have been cases where the state legislature has enacted a tax, which was clearly unconstitutional, and then it was later pulled back by the courts. That happened a few years ago when they imposed a tax on out-of-state banks. but not Washington-based state banks, and that was struck down by the courts. So this gas tax looks like it's headed in the same direction. Another item we've added on our website is an emergency day counter showing how long we have been in a state of emergency. As of today, that's 727 days of emergency governance by Jay Inslee. We're pleased that the economy is opening up, schools are opening. There's been an announcement that the vax mandate will be ending in King County, and the governor has said that he's going to stop the mask mandate, indoor mask mandate, later on in the month of March. These are all positive signs that we are able to deal safely with COVID, but still return to normal social life. But we see that even in Oregon, the governor announced that she is ending emergency rule. That has not yet happened in Washington state, so we'll continue to track that. We want to return to completely normal democratic governance. We don't feel that we're in an emergency situation anymore, and we can just go back to regular democracy. Another item that we are tracking is Elizabeth Hovde, our healthcare expert, has been sacrificing for all of us because she has been attending long, boring hearings by an advisory group to the State Board of Health about a very important issue, and that is whether a COVID vaccine should be required for children before they can attend school. So we already have vaccine requirements for children for public health reasons. They've been in place for many decades. The vaccines for diseases like whooping cough and rubella and childhood diseases like that are well proven and effective, and those are part of the law right now. No one has any dispute about that. Adding the COVID vaccine is another matter. It's less proven, and even the vaccine itself is not a preventative. It doesn't prevent the spread of the disease. So there's more doubt and less information available about this new vaccine, and that's what these hearings were about. What's interesting to us is there seems to be an underlying agenda to just move towards this childhood mandate without much discussion. So one of the rules in public policy is the more process there is, the more layers and wheels and task forces, advisory groups, the more that an agency is probably trying to hide what they're doing. So Elizabeth has tracked every minute of this and posted regular blogs about it. And we had a victory last Thursday in that a working group associated with the Board of Health recommended against a childhood vaccine mandate at this time until more information is available. The Board of Health itself is meeting on March 9th to consider this question. They have many items on their agenda. And again, another hint about how they kind of keep things hidden. You have to scroll down the agenda to about item 8 or 9, and you see tucked away in there a phrase, agenda item to adopt a rule on chapter 246-105 of the Washington Administrative Code on immunization criteria. So one thing that Washington policy experts do is translate that jargon into plain English. That agenda item is mandatory child vaccine to attend school. So that's what Elizabeth explains, and we'll continue to track that. She will attend the hearing on March 9th and report on what happens there. So that's an update of what we're working on. Next is events we have coming up next week. So we have our on the go update at noon on March 1st. We have a great young professionals event in the Tri-Cities. We are starting to do in-person events now, and that event is sold out. That will be on March 3rd. So we're excited to connect with people in the Tri-Cities area. And then on Friday, March 4th, I am doing another Policy Perspectives show live on Facebook with our own Chris Cargill, in which we talk about major state and even national issues and provide our perspective about those. So we hope you're able to attend one of those. In addition, if you like this video, we encourage you to share it with your friends or anyone who's interested in top issues in Washington state. And as always, we want to thank our supporters across Washington for your generous donations and support to Washington Policy Center. That's what makes our work possible, and it allows our expert staff to provide an independent analysis and commentary about what public leaders are doing, such as the issues that I just covered. But they put in many, many hours tracking what's going on, providing positive recommendations for good policy, and then, of course, reporting what state leaders are doing on our behalf. We'll continue to do that, and I'll be back next week with another update. Thank you.